Okay, so I'm a big Terminator fan. I grew up watching Terminator 2 several times when I was a kid, and it is probably one of my favorite films of all time. But when I saw Terminator Genisys, I was a little hesitant, and after I saw the second trailer for it, I thought it was going to be one of the worst films of 2015. But I watched all 4 of the Terminator films, since I have all 4 of them, just to try to see where this fits in the timeline of the other Terminator films. I did like Terminator Genisys, just not as much as the other ones, and I don't know, I'm still deciding which of the 2 Terminator films is the weakest. Terminator 3 or Terminator Genisys, because those are the 2 weakest Terminator films in my opinion. I know a lot of people hate Terminator Salvation, but for me that is the 3rd best of the Terminator franchise. So I know some of us were questioning whether Terminator Genisys is a reboot or it's being something like Days of Future Past and an actual sequel to the rest of the movies, just rebooting everything within the timeline. Well, having seen all 4 of the other films before I went to Terminator Genisys, I think it's a little clearer. You know what? I'm still not quite sure where it fits in the timeline. I think this is supposed to be a sequel to number 2. So I think it's considered the 3rd in the franchise when it comes to the canon and figuring out where this movie lies. But wherever it is in the timeline, I think it's pretty clear to me that they're ignoring number 3 and Salvation completely. So what exactly is Terminator Genisys about? Well, it's about Kyle Reese, and he goes back into time to help Sarah Connor, but something happened in the timeline, and now somehow a Terminator has been sent further into the past when Sarah Connor was 9 years old, and saved her from another Terminator, the Terminator that's in number 2. Yeah, somehow I guess they got mixed up and sent into a timeline where Sarah Connor was 9. So when Kyle Reese gets sent back into time to 1984, Sarah Connor has been palling around with the Terminator and being raised by it, and now she's more, well, a little more like the badass she was in Terminator 2. So he's wondering what's going on, everyone's wondering what's going on, they're trying to stop Judgment Day, there's different points where they go and jump into time, and well, let's just say the plot is pretty convoluted and pretty hectic. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, I did enjoy Terminator Genisys, and I did kind of like it. The action sequences are big, they're crazy, and they are entertaining. And I gotta say, the fight between old Arnold Schwarzenegger and young Arnold Schwarzenegger is pretty epic, and I was loving it. That was like that is the most memorable action sequence in this film for me. And it's probably the only one I will remember in a couple of years. Now I have to give the filmmakers some credit. It seems like they did their research on the Terminator, because there's a lot of sequences in this film that match and completely mirror the images in the first Terminator. And I think there are 2 sequences in this film that were ripped straight from the Terminator, and in particular moments with young Arnold Schwarzenegger. As far as acting goes, Arnold Schwarzenegger knocked it out of the park. He was easily the best character in the movie, and he portrayed him very well, especially even though, yeah, he is a Terminator, he's playing a Terminator. But overall, if you look at all the other Terminators that Arnold Schwarzenegger has played, they all are a little different and a little unique, especially in some of his mannerisms, some of the things that he does and how he walks and how there's some difference between all 4 of the Terminators he plays, and this one is no exception. He was likable, he was funny, he was probably the most human that a Terminator has been in any of the Terminator movies. Well, I guess except for Terminator Salvation, because he actually was human, used to be human, and he had organs and stuff. Sarah Connor really sees the Terminator as a father figure, and I think that relationship was very good. J.K. Simmons was good in his part, even though he has a very minor role, and a very interesting role, actually. Now, I gotta say, I am a little bit mixed when it comes to Emilia Clarke's performance. I think her performance was believable and a very interesting character, but at the same time, I don't feel like she is Sarah Connor. It feels like she's trying to balance between young Sarah Connor in The Terminator and badass Sarah Connor in Terminator 2, but never quite reaching the performance that Linda Hamilton did in either of those two roles. So while I like Emilia Clarke's character, and I think she performed that character very well, it doesn't feel like Sarah Connor to me. So it's a bit of mix, because I do like her performance, I do think the character is interesting, but to me, it doesn't feel like Sarah Connor. Now, someone that doesn't really get a lot of mention, and I think I know why, because he has a very small role in this movie, even though the trailers make it look like he's going to be a bigger role, and that is the person who plays the T-1000 in Genisys. Now, obviously, this might feel to some people an easy role, because I don't even think he says anything in this movie, but there's something about the way he walks and some of his mannerisms that really remind me of Robert Patrick's performance in Terminator 2. Now, there are a few things in Terminator Genisys that I really enjoyed, and a lot of ideas that were very interesting. Now, a lot of the ideas I liked usually revolve around Sarah Connor knowing that Kyle Reese has to have sex with her in order to have John Connor be born. And what makes this dynamic interesting in Terminator Genisys is she knows all about it, she knows what she's supposed to do, but Kyle Reese has no idea yet. He has no idea that John Connor is his son. And at the beginning of the Future War segment, John Connor knows that Kyle Reese is his father. He knows this, and he is keeping it a secret, and there's a little bit of a neat dynamic between those two as well at the beginning of the film. Now, when I saw the twist in the trailers, I was furious, and I thought that it was a terrible idea, but in the movie it actually works. It does explain it in pretty good detail, or at least in a way that makes sense, and at least it's not John Connor is willingly becoming a Terminator or becoming a robot or whatever it is. He's actually being controlled and turned crazy. And what I think Terminator Genisys has going for it the most is the humor, even more so than the action. I think a lot of the little one-liners and a lot of the things that some of these characters say to each other was pretty hilarious, and especially some of the stuff where the Terminator doesn't understand certain human emotions and such, kind of like in Terminator 2. And I gotta say, that helped me get through this movie, because there's a lot of things I didn't like. For one, I am finally understanding why a lot of people do not like Jai Courtney, and yeah, I can understand it now. He is a bit bland, and it's not that he's emotionless, it's just that his face doesn't emote in a way that makes it believable, or that it's almost like, I don't know, there's something about him that is pretty bland. Now, he did fine in the action sequences. I have no problem with him being an action star. The action sequences were actually good when it came to his acting, but when it came to his acting during the dramatic roles, and you're supposed to believe that he is building a relationship with Sarah Connor, there's something, it's like Emily Clarke's doing most of the work in those sequences. And just like Emilia Clarke and me not believing that she's a Sarah Connor, I also didn't believe Jai Courtney was a Kyle Reese. It's very different from the performance by Michael Biehn. I like Jason Clarke, but at the same time it felt like he was phoning it in this film, and didn't feel like a good John Connor. And while the action sequences were amazing to look at and really big, overall they felt soulless. And overall, this movie is a little too long for its own good, and a little bit too confusing for its own good. And I don't know, I guess they're planning on making a Terminator 2 and 3, but after the ending in Genisys, I can't imagine how they could move on and make another Terminator film. It feels like a standalone Terminator movie. So overall, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. A lot of people either love it or hate it. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm giving Terminator Genisys 3 stars. And yeah, I think if you enjoyed Terminator 3, then I think you're going to like Terminator Genisys either more or just as much as Terminator 3, because there's a lot of similarities between that and Terminator Genisys. Okay, so have you seen Terminator Genisys? What did you think about it? If you haven't, what is your favorite Terminator movie from the first 4 Terminator films? Mine is easily Terminator 2, then The Terminator, then Terminator Salvation, very close honestly, then, I don't know, it's either Terminator 3 or Terminator Genisys. I still haven't decided which one is better, and they probably have the same score. I would give both of them about 3 stars. As always, this is Bruce Gifford, and this was Just My Opinion.